Welcome to the last Lunch and Learn. Today we have Lara Silva with us. Lara is going to introduce herself. She worked with me in the past. We built products together, and I'm very excited to hear her answers to some of my questions and also hear her answers to all of your questions. And then by the end, we'll give the proper send off after we're completed with this 1 month program. As I mentioned, I think in every single session, this is an introductory, or for some of you, a way to reflect and remember a lot of topics on product management. I hope that after this, you deep dive in a lot more topics, especially the ones you either feel like you want to know more or the ones that you feel that you want to specialize in. I'm also available to give you guys content and point you in the directions. You can just text me on Slack and I'll help you with that. And of course, if you guys want to shift your careers to product management and you need help either prepping for interviewing, or if you have questions or you want any type of article or content or reading that gets you prepared for that, just ping me directly on Slack. I'm here to help you. So I want to welcome Lara and appreciate your time and your availability. I know you're super busy, but you're going to be sharing with us in the next 40 minutes or 45 minutes a lot of really interesting lessons. So yeah, welcome. The stage is yours. Tell us a bit about yourself and what you've done and why I thought it was relevant for you to come here.
Thank you, Andre. So yeah. I think you probably know my background because I think Andres shared before, but basically I started working in product at Uniplaces. I was before doing financial and risk consultancy, so I have like a financial background. Joined Uniplaces, found out about this product thing, and we set up a team, a huge team, and then after 4 years there, I decided to leave and move to Codacy, where I started working as a head of product, and then I moved VP of product and engineering, which was interesting because I'm not an engineer and I was kind of able to manage engineers, but I think we'll go there in a bit later on. And then now I'm head of product at Coverflex, which is a new Portuguese startup. We can talk about it after if it's relevant for you. And I have 2 dogs and a daughter. And some of you have worked with me in the past, and for those, I miss you. And I want to make fun of you right now, but I can't.
It doesn't work that way, but they can make fun of you on the chat, of course. I can't forget that. I need to get the chat always ready in case you guys have questions. You can always use it and I'll interrupt on my own questions. So I always like to start this with either a belief or a theory that I have. And before going into the engineering backgrounds and product managers, I want to ask something before, which is around motivating teams. I have a belief that one of the most important roles that a product manager has in a cross-functional team is you're in charge of keeping people pumped, motivated, driven, excited about what they're doing. Not a lot of people are good at doing this, but I know you're really good at doing this. Am I right? Am I wrong? How do you do this? How do you keep teams motivated? Tell us a bit about that.
So I think it's first, like, to challenge a bit what you're saying. I think it's your responsibility to keep teams motivated up to a certain point. The limits here. And I think that's a lesson you kind of learn after trying to push people too hard or push people through stuff that it's not necessarily your responsibility to do so. So I think it's more on like focusing on overall motivation of the team and not necessarily feel that individual motivation, it's your own responsibility. That's kind of like a dangerous area to go in. But with what you said, yeah, I like to think that I'm good at it. I'm not sure, but what I think, like, usually what I try to do, and it always starts with one thing, which is transparency. We're going to talk about transparency and honesty a bunch throughout this 45 minutes, but I think it's the number one thing that is key to keep motivation. I think you can lie for a certain period and even manipulate a bit for a certain period, but over time it doesn't work, and you cannot keep your team engaged and motivated with anything if you're not like super transparent and super honest. Another side of transparency, and I think this is just inflow of information, is also feedback. So if you tell them why they're doing something and the kind of impact they have, that usually produce, it's enough. So if you tell them the truth and you tell them why they're doing something, usually it's enough to keep the teams going and moving. If it's pushing a deadline, you need to explain why you were pushing a deadline. If you're delivering a feature, you need to explain why you're doing something. You keep on like pushing the why, the reason behind it. And if you're always honest about everything that is happening, usually it's fine. And then like the third thing that I think usually I like to create is this environment of band of brothers. So like an army environment. So I try that a PM is not necessarily someone outside or above or below, doesn't matter. We're all the same, we're all contributing, and I try to, in all situations, have this feeling that we're fighting against something together. And I think that's very, it's an easy way to keep like people engaged against something, I think.
You mentioned the topic on transparency, and you mentioned that you're going to talk about transparency a lot. And I remember a couple of years ago, and I know you're kind of in charge with this, Codacy, where you worked, went through some radical transformation around transparency. And transparency is one of those topics that it's like everyone likes it and everyone kind of wants it, but no one kind of gets it. It's either management is not okay with that. There's a lot of barriers for transparency. And we talk across the lectures how transparency really helps make products better and make the process to build product much better. Tell us a bit about what was this, if you can, of course, what was this transparency revolution at Codacy? How did you do it? And what was the impact, especially on this topic about teams being motivated? How did that go?
I think the major challenge with transparency, like if you meet an executive team that is up for that, even if conceptually and they don't know like the exact meaning of that or how it can trickle down, if you find a team that wants that, it's one thing, and then put it in like real life, it's really, really challenging. And I think the thing that is most challenging is that sometimes when you're too transparent or you just show everything and you say as it is, and you have meetings like open door meetings, but you actually have them, it's tough because that's a lot of work. You really need to manage expectations after, during, while you're talking. You know that your entire team is listening. You know that the other manager is also speaking while having his own team listening. So it's very, very hard to maintain you grounded and the others grounded and feel safe at the same time, knowing that everybody's listening, everything that is being said or is being discussed. So saying that like you cannot go into a transparency journey without going into a safety and feedback culture journey as well. If you do one without the other, what happens is that you create very unsafe spaces and conversations will end up and be way more aggressive and more closed, which is exactly the opposite of your intentions when you set up the transparency journey ahead. So it's a dangerous path, I would say. You need to be mindful.
So it's either you're all in, or it's even better to not be in at all because it's going to be worse than status quo.
I agree. First, like if you're all in, you need to understand that it's a lot of work. It's not like this, I don't know, like a value that you put on a landing page and it's done. There's a lot of work in here, and it's continuous work. And people are not super used to it. So you need to teach people how to do it, how to feel safe in a transparent environment, how to like speak openly and be okay with the consequences. This is a lot of work. And this is like, especially in leadership teams, when you like young leadership teams and you're trying to manage a bunch of things and it's very tense, but then you cannot say anything bad about anyone because everybody's listening and it's very tense. It's hard. So I would say that you either go for it and you embrace the challenge and you're up to it, or don't half do it.
So what type of things do you have transparent there? Because I know, for example, that the salaries, or at least you have a tool that allows people to see the salaries that Codacy pays publicly. What are other things you have transparent? Yeah.
At Codacy, I don't know how it is now, but before we had a rule of no private channels on Slack, so only public channels. All conversations were open, no private calendar events, everything was open. All meetings recorded and stored on the drive, like everything. And then salaries were organized, and like, you didn't know like the exact salary up to a certain point. After a point you knew, because we had to standardize everybody. And yeah, pretty much that's like everything aside from individual performance related information was public and out there to be found and discussed.
Yeah, it's a big shift, and one of the things I believed, at least that I saw, is when you start investing in transparency, one of the things that sometimes that gets easier is managing and navigating chaos. Things are simply out there, and your ability or overhead to manage stuff because you can't include someone or you can't say something to someone, and that's the chaotic part of management. It becomes easier with transparency. So that leads me to my next question, which is, I've worked with you and I've seen you being really, really good at navigating chaos, getting stuff organized, and a big part of the shipping process of finally we planned and now we need to get stuff done and shipped is around navigating chaos. Tell us a bit about that. What are your tips to navigate chaos? What advice would you give?
So on this one, I was like really thinking through to pick what I was going to say, because there's a lot to say here, I think, on chaos. The first thing that I think I usually do is that I have a mental map, my own map of what is necessary. So imagine like if you're about to ship something or release a huge project or whatever, I think it works for everything. What will be the more streamlined version of it if you like, if everything goes south and you have like to give up of all the parts that are a bit unnecessary, what is like the streamlined version of that plan? And have it like really close to your heart. And this is the first stage. That's what I do. This will help me on everything. So if I have negotiations with stakeholders and they really want something, or an investor was super pumped about the feature, or a customer, whatever, really needed that in order to not churn, I don't care. I remember that I took those considerations before. I had my plan, and under chaos, I will go back to my plan and just ignore everything else. So that will be my first, it's usually my first step to everything. The second step, and this goes back to transparency, is to share this plan. So if this plan is not mine and is the plan of the team, and everybody understands the set of priorities really, really well, then we can all make the same assessments. So I don't need to oversee all the discussions and all the trade-offs, and everybody can make the same judgments and the same discussions that I would do. That would be my second advice on chaos. Then like the third thing, I don't know if I'm going fast. Tell me if I am, otherwise I'll go. The third thing that I'll do is that you need to have fun. And this sounds a bit cheesy, but if you get overwhelmed with chaos, it will be bad for you, because you'll be over and over in different chaotic situations, and it's fine. And I think it's a cool thing is that you put chaos in perspective. It's not your internal chaos, it's chaos happening outside. And if you have fun with it and it's fun, it's like a challenge. You put yourself outside, you see chaos from the side, and you just tackle it that way. It's key, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed with chaos. Another thing will be that sometimes I feel like PMs tend to absorb chaos and protect teams from chaos. I don't think this is necessarily good. I think pressure should be shared, because if the PMs are the ones, I think you need to manage situations and conversations and noise, but not pressure. Because if the PM is holding all the pressure of all the stakeholders and the company, you will break down, you will break, because the team no idea. So they will go on the pace they're doing. They will be suggesting like refactors and new implementations and iterations. And you're like, oh my God, I just need this out. They have no idea, because you have been shielding them from the chaos the entire time. So I think it's very important to pick the moments where you should release some of the chaos, share some of the chaos, and not just make it yours to fix. I don't think it's yours. Yeah, and then I think the last one, and so something that we discussed before, is frameworks. So there's like tons of ways you can organize your work, especially under chaos. And what I would suggest is for you to not stick with something and not be like, don't face framework like a religion. I know like they told me that you have been talking about a number of different frameworks. Just find something that is more adaptable to the type of chaos you are in, and don't shy away from changing from one framework to the other if it makes more sense to you and your team. Yeah, that will be my.
I think that's a great answer. It ties really well with what we talked in the end of yesterday's session, where frameworks are mental models, but not the end goal itself. It's a way to make you and help you think, especially in real time and under pressure, which stems from chaos itself. And at least from my experience, oftentimes chaos is created by stakeholders. Whether it's because the sales team over promised something, or because founders are sometimes irrational and want stuff for yesterday, or because suddenly priorities change because a certain team couldn't deliver on the other one and one just gained something else. So I want to talk a bit about stakeholders and the fact that a lot of PMs feel this pressure and feel this chaos because stakeholders want hundreds of different things, sometimes all at the same time, and they don't understand product teams can't do everything all the time. So how do you do this? How do you manage expectations? How do you manage stakeholders? Do you have any tips or advices?
So I think the first, I don't want to say mistake, but I'm going to say mistake, is to blame it on the stakeholders. So I think you can, I'm sure you talked about users a bunch and the relationship of a PM with a user and all the steps and all the empathy that is required, blah, 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 put yourself in the user's perspective, feel the pain points, blah, blah, blah. So I think the best advice for stakeholder management is to consider the stakeholder management use the same approach that you have for users, for stakeholders. So they are like people, they have fears, they have motivations, they are struggling with stuff, they have intentions. So if you bring the same kind of empathy and the same time of openness, I would say, to their problems that you have for a user, it's very useful. First, they feel it. They honestly feel that you care. And it's no longer about the request, it's about the connection between you, the PM, and the stakeholder, which is super key. Because the moment you say no to a stakeholder, it's not listening, saying no to the request, is listening, you're saying no to me. So if you bond on a connection and you understand the fears, you understand why he's asking this, what is in for him if you don't deliver this, and you manage to really deeply understand him, saying no is going to be much easier. And being sure about that no is also much easier because you understand the consequences of your own decisions. So I would say, don't treat stakeholders as much as possible. Treat them as people. Bring the same approach you bring to users to stakeholders, and it's usually okay. The only piece of advice in terms of classic stakeholder management that I would give is that identify whoever is key in your project or product or feature ahead and involve them sooner. That's the only thing that is usually an advice from all frameworks. I would say that always do that and consider yourself in a position of, if you are, again, this is treating people, not stakeholders. If you are someone that thinks that really know about something and you just bring your brought last minute to a project, you're going to be upset. Even if you don't like to admit, you're going to be upset. Stakeholders are the same. So anyone that can or thinks that can give you some advice and it's influential on your project, involve them as sooner as possible. And that will be the only usual tip that I would also give.
Yeah, I agree on that part. One of the things that I actually changed, and this is now on a personal side, one of the things that we used to do, at least at Uniplaces we used to do, is we used to have stakeholder meetings, and it was very, very specific on an area or a specific department or a role of someone, and that removes the human part of whoever's participating there and focuses a lot on me as a stakeholder, I need A, B, and C. And it's very transactional. And one of the things that I changed to, at least it helped me manage stakeholders better, is I book meetings with people, not stakeholders themselves. There's a correlation between that person being a stakeholder, but when we book meetings with people and we focus on what's hurting that person or what's keeping them from doing a better job, oftentimes when the conversation is focused on that, the main requirements of the stakeholder actually come above, because whatever's hurting them or whatever's keeping them from achieving their targets is the best requirement for product to help that stakeholder become better at it. And when we shift, do you agree that that helps?
Yeah, completely. And
You have
another thing that
go.
another thing that I think is helpful sometimes is to mix stakeholders, especially when you have multiple requests from different areas, not necessarily requests that go against each other, but that definitely like you don't have availability to handle both. Bring like both people with you to come up with a puzzle. Usually the group will say no to both requests, and you're not the one doing that. It's the puzzle itself that is doing that. And I think it really helps. So that you said, like more one-on-ones and actual relationship and not stakeholder management, and then bring people to the prioritization problem and not just collecting information, I think also helps.
Yeah. Stakeholder management. We talked yesterday on the session of shipping and delivering, and a big part is this stakeholder management. And there are some teams who are really good and some PMs who are really good. There are others who are better in other stages of the shipping process. And I want to touch in this. And I think I asked this question last week. I want to ask again, which is, on this execution part of the process, what differentiates a team that's like really strong versus others that aren't just as strong? Do you have any characteristics, variables that you've seen in your teams as this team, because of maybe this PM or this combination of factors in the team, makes it a really good team at executing and delivering?
So I think like on a more granular level, you really need to nail down on the framework and the types of procedures you use. You can have a team that really sucks with like sprints, madness, and scrum ceremonies and all that jazz, and then you move them to something that is a bit more loose, and they're good at it, and it's fine. So I think you should adjust the framework to cater the kind of environment you have on your hands, and also adjust your own the need for your involvement. So some teams will be more junior, and like the dev team will be more junior, harder to manage difficult conversations, blah, 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 blah. Some teams will have less design availability, whatever. You understand what I'm saying? So adjust your own behavior accordingly and help as much as possible. On a more like high level, like I think what is consistently, it's more like cultural things. Maybe I'm going to like ideological, I don't know, stop me if you want. But like I think like culturally, what I see that usually it's a really like a bummer for delivery. It's a fear, a culture of fear or blame culture. So if usually when development teams, if they feel that they cannot make quick calls or they cannot like ship stuff without them being blamed on something, or feeling the pressure that they might not have enough information to make this call, and they need to involve 300 engineers to make a tech discussion, and now we have a tech roadmap to deliver features, like, oh my God, no. If you can like create, and this sometimes is off of the PM's hands if that exists, but we can discuss that after. But it needs to be a safe space, and the individuals need to feel that whatever decision they make, product or tech, it's the team decision and no one is to blame. And I think this is super key on execution, because if you don't have this environment, it will fail in the betweens, in the cracks. Like discussions will take longer, reviews will be more messy. They will not have like creative ideas because they will be afraid of whatever. So definitely a blame culture is something to avoid. Then a second thing will be reasoning. I'm sure you mentioned like why, you said why 300 times over this last month. Reasoning, I think, is super key, because the PM, like you can, I think like whenever I'm in a project, I like to do everything, but I should not be the only person doing anything. Like everybody should be able to do everything. I can die and I still want the product to be live and to go live. There must be like a super deep connection between whoever is doing something to why they are doing something. And I think this is also super critical on the execution, not just on the discovery side of things and on the execution of things, actually on the execution. They will make faster judgments, cut corners if needed, not cut corners when they shouldn't, because they understand why they're doing something. If you take them the why and you just give them an implementation plan, and it will never be complete, ever, they will not know what to decide. And so I think it's super key to keep that narrative super close to whoever is implementing anything. And then the third thing will be autonomy, which I kind of touched a bit, but it's like giving this sense of I'm part of the entire spectrum of things, from the product manager, the product designer, anyone that is in the process has the same level of ownership and autonomy, and you kind of need like to push this. Otherwise, it creates like this hand-holding relationship, which is super weird. And then out of the blue, you are super overloaded, chaos around you, you're tired, and you expect people to man up and to do a lot of work, but you never like teach them to do that. You are hand-holding the entire time. So autonomy, I would say it's my third one as like this necessary item.
You mentioned culture, you mentioned purpose, and a lot of people define culture as this either a shared set of beliefs or this things that you do when no one's watching, which is kind of aligned with the purpose. You need to have everyone in the same page of why we're doing something. Like, have you done something in the past that really helped make the culture, especially the product culture, better? And by better, let's say either make people happier, which is a great way to make a culture better, or to deliver better outcome focused. Have you done something with your teams that not only made culture better, but also that made the teams that weren't as good becoming better at this?
I think so. I think one thing that I think is super, super key, like one event that I would like hold dear to my heart is retrospectives. And I think that event solely can be really, really, really helpful on that, because you can really listen to feedback, sometimes super destructive feedback. And if you have a voting system, they vote, and then you kind of see the trends of what is like unspoken problems and stuff like that. You can take that feedback and really turn that into something. Another thing that we did at Codacy was that we had every quarter, we had like a health check, a squad health check, where we had like cards with different like kind of things. Like I remember one was like, am I a pawn or am I a player? To like measure the kind of engagements the developers feel they have with the decision making, code quality, whatever will be the things that make a happy team will be there. And we would grade how are we and how are we versus last quarter, and see if we were in a upcoming trend. I think sometimes like it's not necessarily what you do, but the fact that the team feels involved in the process of being better, even if you're not doing anything. Maybe you're just changing a framework or the times of your dailies or whatever process it's the problem. The fact that everybody's together and try to come up with a better way to work, that solely will increase happiness. So I think we have like retrospectives were a big thing. We had these health checks. And then we did a lot of things because at least in Codacy, it's a very like techie tech company, and the engineers like the entire soul. If the culture of the engineer team was fine, like everything was fine around it. So the people department and the product department, they work really closely for this. So we would go from problem to problem and understand like what could we do. So at a certain moment, pair programming and pair designing was the thing. We did a bunch of lunch and learns on the topic, and we tried different projects to try out these kind of different ways of working. So yeah, we did a bunch of things. I don't know if necessarily like happiness increased, but at least during the moment that we were trying to make things better, everybody was happy. So yeah.
Yeah. A big correlation with happiness is you feel you're heard and that your mind is valuable for someone and for the process. So I'm pretty sure it did. So I want to touch on the topic, which is you have two characteristics, or there are two things in you that bring a lot of hope, I think. One, you're a woman in a leadership position, especially in a technical field like product, which I feel like we desperately need more. And number two is you're a non-technical person by training, working in or have worked with very technical products. And I'm going to focus on the second one because the first one is very self-explanatory, and hopefully this program helps bring more people into the field and more women into the field. But on the second one, a lot of people, there's a lot of discussion on, do I need a technical background to work with as a product manager? Do I need a technical background to work in technical products or in technical environments? And you were able to do this. So tell us a bit about how you did this, how does it work, and any tips or advices on people who might not have an engineering background, but are keen in building technology and being peers to people that are technologists.
Yeah. So I think I have my own journey on that, because I think sometimes it's very challenging when you enter a room and you don't understand anything. And it's not like a bunch of engineers will not make your life easier. Some will not, and they will have a laugh because you don't understand anything. So I had my journey on that. I think right now I have this system. Like, there's things that I believe. I believe in one thing, that techie tech is just another language. It's like when you step in another country and you don't understand the language, it's fine. It's fine. You will navigate soon. Just give it a week or so. So I'm now, it's fine. If I don't understand something, I'm really comfortable with it, which I think this is the first step, is you feeling before like everybody else, like, okay, it's fine that you don't know. Then the second thing is that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Every problem, even a tech problem, is a logic problem. And if you can handle logic, you can handle anything. It's really like that. The only challenge, the actual challenge, is to make engineers explain you stuff in a logical way. That's the real challenge here, which is also easy. The only thing that I think for me it's very handy is that, say you join an organization, it's the first time you're a PM, or it's the first time you're managing a team that's it's a tech team and you're not tech. It's a way to be useful very quickly. Like, I don't know on what, just find a way to be very useful very quickly. And then eventually one engineer will realize that, wait, spend my time explaining my problem to her, she'll probably help me. And he explains. After a month, you were like doing tech roadmaps with them because you can help with logic, even if you don't understand like a thing of what they're saying. So be comfortable with not knowing. It's super fine. Logic is what you need to master, not techie, whatever. And then find a way that they believe that bringing you to the problem will be helpful. Once it starts happening, it's yours. It's fine. It's all fine.
Touching on this, because you mentioned something which is find a way to be useful really fast or quickly. We discussed in the past when we worked together. We discussed on that thing called always bring the donuts, like the Ken Norton thing of bringing the donuts, and how that's a mindset for a PM. And that's also an analogy to be useful. Tell us a bit about what that bring the donuts means to you, and how did you in the past, how did you bring the donuts to your teams? How does that become something?
I think like I know like my own like set of donuts. So I usually know like what can I resort to really quickly. One thing that I'm like usually good at is managing difficult conversations. It's something that I can easily do. Like if two engineers are fighting, I can like help them get to a solution, even if I don't understand what is happening. I can like and like I can make one engineer understand the other because they're just not listening to each other. So to me, like that has been like an incredible, useful donut, because if I step in like in a meeting with 1 week in a company, I can help a very hard conversation occur. That means like the next bad conversation they're having, they're bringing along, so it creates a good, like, not super healthy relationship, but it's a good starting point. So yeah, I definitely use that a lot. Then another thing that I would say is that I never ask someone to do shitty work. I do the shitty work. And I do think people really appreciate that. And then they help, everybody helps. And then after 1 a.m., we're all doing shitty work together. And then we order actual donuts together. And then it creates this connection that you don't feel like there's no distance anymore and you're there for anything. So I use that a lot as well.
So that's really motivating for people joining a program on product. You're going to be doing shitty work for others not. Thank you very much.
No, 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 no. That's no. I meant I'm not. I'm doing my own shitty work. Like anything that is, this kind of work that you need to spend hours doing the same crap and it's just boring as hell. I never ask someone to do that. And in the beginning, I offer myself to help others doing theirs. Yeah, but come on.
No, yeah, we talk about the servant mindset and how you're here to unlock people so that they can run faster. And a lot of times it's doing the shitty work so that they can focus on what they do better. And we're
Yeah.
the thing about PMs is we're good at hacking ways of turning shitty work in a very at least faster or more scalable way. So I do get that point. I think it makes sense.
Andre, just another thing. This is just like a pro tip for non-tech. It's just there's these things that engineers tell you that if they say these things, just know that they're lying. Like one is it's impossible. It's not. They're lying. Another one is I'm preparing for the future. They might think they are. They don't know they're lying, but they are lying. So ignore that. Another one is that it's just a quick refactor. Major lie. There's no quick refactor. That's like a revert in 1 month, 3,000 bugs that nobody knows where it comes from. And then like doing things now will save us time in the future. Also not true. So if they if they give you these punchlines, make them as you make the other stakeholders sweat. Exactly the same. Ask 3,000 questions, ask metrics, ask reasoning. They will give up and then you can move on. They don't know. They don't know. So it took me some time.
I want to take on that one because I remember from my experience, that was usually the conversation when they wanted to implement a new stack or a new language, a new programming language. And the thing they would say is like, this is going to get us to a better future. Things will be so much easier to develop and faster. And generally it's a lie. If this is the argument, I mean, there might be reasons to it, but if these are the arguments, then yeah, it's likely that
I don't think it's like a mean lie. It's sometimes just an honest, like naive approach to things. And it's just, I think sometimes, I don't know, at least in the beginning of our careers, Andre, I think we were much tougher with external stakeholders than with tech team. And they'll just give us like a bunch of crap and we'll say, yeah, we need to do this refactor. Why, God, why? And if I was going back, I would be so much harder with them and like really tough questions. And if in the end a new technology is the way to go, I will fight my ass to have the new technology, but they need to convince me.
This remind me of something, talking about stakeholders again. One of the tricks, a lot of stories here, but one of the tricks that really helps stakeholder management is when a stakeholder asks you something, the first thing you ask back is what? And when you ask what, it makes someone explain the thing they asked in a different way. And if they can't, it's very likely it's not that important. And even when they do, you then go again and ask why. And if they don't have an argument to explain the thing they're asking, maybe that's not that important. And then when you punch them, it's like left and right. You go, what? Why? If they can't overcome this, then it's very likely that that is not really needed, or it means that they need to do a bit more work around like the requirements and the reasoning. Otherwise, if you don't do this, it's just going to go to engineering. You're going to spend a lot of money. You're going to spend a lot of your time. You're going to be trading off with something else that could be more important. And it's just a really good way to buy time. The good people who do prep their own requirements, they'll be really good and quickly at answering the what and the why, and it really helped. And doing the same for engineering does help.
Yeah.
Cool. So I have a question here, and now we go into that final stretch of questions, which are kind of advice and how you do this. So the next question is around mistakes. Everyone does mistakes. We talk a lot about on our sessions that doing mistakes is a way to gather data and learn. It's not a bad thing. It's only bad if you do the same mistake twice. What mistakes have you made in the past, especially around execution and shipping, that now you probably don't do, and you'd love to tell people, look, don't do this?
I would like to say that I don't do them anymore, not necessarily true. But one thing that I'm like, I think a bit more aware is overcomplicating functionalities, products, roadmaps, whatever. Sometimes like we get so into a problem and then a solution, and then we create these beasts, and it's most of the times unnecessary. And then you go into like super hard implementation moments, super hard discussions, super hard decisions. You have an entire organization on your back, and then it was too much commitment for the kind of returns you're getting, like I mean like actual impact. So I would say that definitely try to make smaller plans, smaller endeavors, not go like wild on implementation plans and massive deliveries. I would say that's definitely something that I still do, and but I'm like I think I'm a bit more aware than I don't know 10 years ago. Then the second thing I think goes a bit with what we said before of treating stakeholders like this bad party. I think in the past I've closed roadmaps too hard. Like you define a plan, like bye. We speak in 3 months or we speak whatever time frame. And I think in the past I did it in a not so nice way, very closed. And now I think I'm a bit more mindful that three months is a way of like a long period. People learn, we learn, everybody learns. There's like no official commitment to anything, and be a bit more loose with plans. So I think this can do create more chaos. It's true, but it's also like you're not delaying your own learnings and the ability of others to contribute to a specific moment in time and have more freedom in this contribution. It's a bit more like chaotic in the management side of it, but I do believe it's more beneficial. So I would say that this is something that this one I don't do anymore. At least I try. If I do an assessment, I'm way much better at this one than before. I think way more open.
I think it makes sense, and it's probably tying to, and this is the next question, which is principles that you operate under. I always ask to the guests in the end, like, is there anything that helps you operate in a certain way that you try to also convene to other people that very likely ties up to learnings from these mistakes?
I always said one. So one thing is transparency and honesty. I'm super transparent. My default is really to be honest. I expect no less from any party that I'm engaging with, like no less. And I will share. I'll bring my own perspective. I'll ask for perspective, and I'll kind of demand the same. Like it's something that it's my principle. I don't operate in other way. That's really like something that's non-negotiable. And a second one is energy. And I think this goes a bit with what the beginning of the conversation, when we said that as PMs, we need to pump the team. I do think this is true. I do think that we have an extra responsibility on energy, and do like to bring a lot of energy and kind of like happiness not in a cheesy way, like bum energy, like let's go through this, let's finish, let's do it, blah, blah, blah. I kind of demand that in return as well. I will push for you and I will bring the donuts, but I also want that in return. I want you to bring energy. I want you to be, and now than before I would feel more like it's my responsibility. Now I try to come up with ways for people to feel that that's their own responsibility, to be energized and to find reasoning and to understand and to bring energy also to others. So I think I'm more on that spectrum right now. So yeah, those will be my two things: transparency and energy, bring and demand.
I think those tie really well with the next question, which is progressing in a product career. So we talked in the past about becoming a PM and how hard it is, because a lot of product leaders only hire people with experience, or oftentimes what happens is you fall into the role because you're working in another area in a company, and because you showcase these characteristics, like you're curious, energetic, you're smart, you're sharp, you tend to go into the product team, because we always look for the best of the best. But I want to focus on progressing, because we already have some PMs here. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to be either in a product role or working with product management, or in a role that makes you want to progress and become leaders in your own areas. So I want to ask you, what can you tell us about progressing in a product career? You particularly went from PM, you're now a VP engineering, a head of product. So tell us a bit about how you do this and how would you advise others too?
So I don't think I'm the best person on like career progression, kind of, I don't know, because it's not something I usually focus on. So it's
So
more
maybe
of
that's
a,
one point. Don't focus on it.
I don't know, maybe that's not a great advice. I don't know. It just happens. And I don't mean that in like in a fake humble way. It's just something I usually don't care much. But I do have managed people that care, and I do have like this, like people around me that's I've seen them how they do it and what makes sense. I do think like, however, like I think you should think about yourself. It's not just I want to be a PM. Okay, you want to be a PM of what? And I think you need to understand what you like, because being a PM, like you can be a PM and it's completely different in an organization that it has like 3,000 PMs, or an organization where you're the only product person. I mean, like if you want to be a VP of product, join an organization where you are the only product person, quickly the VP of product. If that's what you want, I don't think you should like maximize for that though. I think you should like think about what kind of environments you like. If you would rather like being a more beta, I don't know, a very small team, seed stage, or if you want to go into a very, very big team, and depending on the type of product problems you like to solve. Some product managers thrive under discovery. Some really enjoy optimization and cracking numbers and all of that madness. So I would say first focus on that. Focus on what do you really like, what type of problems you like, and go for the position and the company that will give you more of those problems. Mostly because you will mainly excel on those. Then after you're done with this and you want to expand and you want to learn stuff that you're not necessarily great or comfortable, then you can also browse for that. If you want to grow, be sure you like to manage people. If you want to grow into managing products and people, and being a PM and managing PMs is different. And be sure that you want that path. Like I think I don't shy away from executive or leadership positions, but I don't necessarily see myself as a manager. I don't like. I remember that back at Uni Places we had this like head of engineering that he really liked. Like he really liked that he was able to unleash the power of someone and unblock someone. I like it, but that doesn't make me wake up happy in the morning. Like it's a happy coincidence that happened. So be sure that you want the management track thing and that you really care about it. Otherwise, focus more on the product and what you like, the types of products and the type of product problems you I don't know. I don't think you should optimize for career in any of your life. So I really am not the greatest person to answer this.
I think the best analogy is the same way that great products generally win in the market, great people at executing their products often correlate with those that grow and become the leaders of those products. So yeah, optimize for doing your job really well, and it'll happen, or at least
Yeah,
like.
I think we are also in a very like privileged position within organizations because we do have contact with everybody. It's very easy to get like popular sense that everybody knows you. It's very easy to get noticed because you have like meetings with everybody, from investors to doing actual like customer support sessions with everybody. You do everything. So it's a very easy position to stand out. So I don't think it's hard to progress if you really are up for that. I think, yeah, I think the best advice is to focus on the product. Everything else will come after.
Okay, so final question, and then I'll give you a few minutes if you want to talk about CoverFlex. But the final question is, what advice would you give your younger self if you were joining the product world today? You're going to start tomorrow, super pumped. What one or two advice would you give?
Yeah, I think one thing that you kind of do this more and more is that you will see that. I think this was one thing that I struggled a lot at Uni Places, and then I finally let go and understand now, which is, where does it lie the boundary between product vision, product strategy, between a PM and even the company CEO and leadership? It's very weird because they have ideas and direction and blah, blah, blah. And then we also, and sometimes it's a very hard game to manage all that energy and all those ideas from leadership. And I think in the beginning of my PM journey, I got way too stressed with it. I took every idea as a serious demand, any like pressure as like, oh my God, we need to do this now, or need to do everything. And now it's just, okay, it's fine, it's fine. And also like before, I think I would shut things down and say, no, bye, see you never. And now like I appreciate that energy more. I appreciate those ideas more. I think they're beneficial. I don't think they're bad. I think the reason why we join startups sometimes is because of those same crazy founders. So we need to be respectful of that energy and kind of use it well. That's the same as we do with squads. Look at leadership teams and executives as also a source of energy and not something that is just draining your own energy. Yeah, I really was bad at it.
Yeah, I think it makes absolute sense. So before we wrap up, I saw that David had a question here on the chat around the topic of non-technical background and the skills. David, you want to explain a bit more around what you look for in your question that wasn't answered in the first one about being a non-technical PM?
Yeah, so hi Lara, thank you for your all the session is quite interesting. Also, being a non or having a non-technical background, it's especially interesting for me. So my question was about the when you are entering or when you are in your first experiences as a PM, you probably felt that you needed to deepen some hard skills like road mapping or UX research or specific things that you felt you didn't have the background to do it effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm being specific.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily hard skills related with technological or engineering work, right? You mean everything?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, like in the beginning, I had no idea. I had no idea on anything. Like I had no like 0.0 idea. I think what we did was that every time we stumble upon a problem, we would get the necessary skills to address that problem. So we try to learn everything at the same time. But if we try in the beginning was like we had a problem, say I don't know, a user problem, and we felt like, okay, this is time for us to actually have user research sessions with actual users. We would just see the ton, understand the ton of that, and then start doing our first users research sessions, and then iterate on those as well. So I think it was always of like you kind of now you have this course, right? But you have like a full maybe scope of all the black holes you don't understand. So
Right.
instead of approaching that as a whole, like, oh, I need to be the best PM ever in all stages. I don't think it's like that. It's like I think you go for a problem, for a product problem. You kind of know the tools that exist. You don't know how to use them. Fine. And then you go for specific tools for a specific problem. You try to get better on those. And then maybe tomorrow you have a similar problem. You use the same tools, but you are a bit better. Next time you do something else. So I think if now I was going to say all the hard skills, I would touch points in all like things that maybe you mentioned in the course. Not necessarily because I mastered them, but I touch them as well. So I don't know if this answers in any way. I think the only thing is just don't take it as you need to know it all. I don't think you do. You don't.
It's very dependent on the problem you are solving.
Yes, I think so.
You will learn based on that.
Yeah, basically. And I think one thing that is pretty cool is that you really, even on the relationship with development, like with the tech world, everything counts, right? You learn this kind of tools and this kind of, let's say, user researching, or whatever we said road mapping. You kind of like the next time you do it, you will understand bits and parts that you can adjust to other problems that you have. So you're always compounding on the tools that you have available. So yeah, I learned a bit of everything, if that makes sense. It really depends.
David, my 2 cents on hard skills, I would put it with two. One, writing. A lot of people don't see writing as a skill, but the ability to write something, to be really good at writing, to be write only the things that are really needed and be able to communicate in writing specifically is a great skill to master as being a PM. And the other one is querying a database, writing SQL queries, being able to get the data. It's a great way to not be tricked by others. If you have data, oftentimes you have information to master the decision-making process. So I would add those two as great skills to have.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you, André.
We're done. Lara, I really appreciate. I do recommend, I'm not going to push you on. If you guys want to see, go to Lara's new company, coverflex.com. And it feels like one of those podcasts where I'm going to say,
I
like,
hate that.
and you get 10% discount. I'm going to.
I hate that.
I need to find a way to put that in the next sessions. But
Don't.
yeah, please do go see. It's an amazing product, and Lara is helping that become an unbelievable company. I really want to appreciate your time and answering these questions. So thanks for the availability, and for everyone else. Congrats, you survived a whole month of not only listening to me, but listening to what product is, hopefully for some refreshing your own concepts of it. As I mentioned yesterday, for those working on a product challenge, or for anyone who still has questions or wants to know more, feel free, you'll get my feedback, feel free to send me messages. And I really want to appreciate every single one of you, and you'll get a direct message on Slack from me, appreciating you joining on the first edition, taking the gamble, risking. That's a big part of building products, is risking on something that hopefully then works. And you guys did that. So thank you very much. I really appreciate. I'm getting certificates, statements of participation. I don't even know the names of that things for every single person who went through. I almost want to call it a statement of survival, because you went through this, you got it. And again, really appreciate you being here. I hope it was useful, both the program, but also this session with Lara. I think, as I mentioned, we need more people building products. We need more people that aren't afraid of tackling technical products, even though you might not be engineers by trade. We need also more diverse leaders in our community to build better products that include more people. And I think you're a great representation of this. And I really appreciate you dedicating the most valuable asset you guys have, which is your time, to be with us here today and throughout the month. And I'm super excited to seeing the products you guys are going to build. So keep me on the loop there. We'll speak on Slack. And Lara, thank you very much for the time. And thanks everyone. Have a great weekend. And I appreciate every single one of you.